there would be Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, followed by Ireland, Ukraine, Hungary, and then comes Iceland and Armenia. And only after this list, you would get to other countries from other regions. That shows the extent to which the crisis, which did originate in the Euro-Atlantic economic area, impacted this region of the world disproportionately to others. Now, the reactions to the developments were as different as the impact on the growth. In some countries, policies did moderate downturn, while in others there was a very limited space to do anything, really. In some countries, fiscal policy has tightened, but in countries which had very high levels of deficit or debt, or indeed in those where these high levels of deficit on debt were sparking loss of confidence and market problems, such as Hungary and Romania, there needed to be a reduction in the deficits. Estonia, which I've shown you on the previous graph, managed tight fiscal policy and a headline deterioration of fiscal deficit of only 2 percentage points, despite this horrendous decline in output. Now, in other countries, the automatic stabilizers were allowed to play their course, and some other countries even relaxed fiscal policy in response to the crisis. Czech Republic and Poland were examples of that. Unlike in previous emerging market crises, the monetary policy was generally eased during the crisis, and that's again in part influenced by the fact that decline in interest rates in Western Europe, together with large role played by Western European banks and by euro funding in these economies, made it possible to relax domestic interest rates, even though the countries were undergoing this crisis. And that's a big difference to, say, developments in Asia 10 years ago. On the banking sector issues, I'd like to point out that while the prime impetus was a contagion from Western European banks, again, a number of countries, such as those listed here as recipients of foreign funds, Hungary, Latvia, Ukraine in particular, had their own domestic financial sector problems, and these were very important in worsening the situation. Now, in some countries, the exchange rate depreciated sharply. Others chose to use whatever funds they really had and most of their reserves to defend the exchange rate. So it's very hard to distill any lessons from that so far. And finally, fund programs were launched in many of those countries due to very large balance of payments needs, but also somewhat in contrast in what's a caricature of Washington consensus to support fiscal spending. And a very large component of many of those programs are actually to support fiscal expansion to alleviate social impact of the crisis. Now, as I said, the emerging Europe was very strongly influenced by Western Europe, but the response to the crisis is really a European-wide response, because it is so vetted through either trade links or even membership into the European Union. And the response was despite, rather than thanks to the existence of so many European institutions we have heard about yesterday, actually fairly coordinated. Well, ECB did play a critical role in design of many of the liquidity measures and guarantees and asset purchases and the like, but the real actual policy response and the degree of coordination came from a summit of euro area heads in Paris, convened by President Sarkozy, totally outside of any formal coordination procedures which the European Union had, and literally due to the personal leadership and the sheer luck that France, as an influential country, was a presidency of the European Union at the time when Lehman Brothers collapsed. So the result was a powerful and coherent policy response, I would argue, that did set the stage for recovery, but it was more or less by sheer luck. Now, what we see as a result is that the crisis is abating, but the recovery is very tentative and in many places still very vulnerable to shocks. Financial system remains very impaired. While the conditions did improve, they are very far from normal, and credit losses in particular continue to mount. Household balance sheets are very weak. They are still in a need to repair. And unemployment rate is not expected to peak until mid-2010. So any exit from this massive public intervention, which we have seen in both the United States and Europe, has to be very carefully calibrated and has to be accompanied by a global rebalancing of growth, which I hope we will touch upon a bit in this panel, in that countries that had traditionally relied on export-led growth cannot rely on it to such an extent in the years forward, and would have to consequently shift more to domestic sources of growth. And finally, to achieve that, we do need a multilateral effort where advanced economies need to tackle seriously fiscal adjustment, and the emerging markets need to address social safety nets and exchange rate issues in order to enable this rebalancing of global growth. This is just a small illustration that things are coming more or less back to norm, and that across classes of assets we see a considerable improvement. Now, whether that has been a result of interventions or came despite of interventions, I think it's too early to say. World Economic Outlook published by the IMF tries to look at it a bit through an event analysis of analyzing market reactions to announcements of different policies, but it is too early and too fragmented an information to say what were the decisive measures which led to an uptick in the market. So by some criteria, if you look at all of this, you can say that the coordinated response of advanced economies has been successful. Meltdown was avoided, access to liquidity is improving, banks are even able to raise private capital, credit supply is reasonably holding up given the degree of economic decline which I've showed you, and no Western bank has abandoned Eastern European branch. Growth prospects are improving, and all of this pretty much without too much of an inflation. Now, all of this comes, however, at a fairly heavy cost. One is that even after all of the mess we have gone through, there seems to be still no political will, especially in Europe, to tackle decisively problems in the financial sector which are known for years. And there is still a very long way to go to address the balance sheet weaknesses which are already accumulated in financial sector balance sheets. Quite obviously, the moral hazard has been reinforced, especially for large institutions. And for many banks by now, it's really back to business as usual. And the policy discourse is hijacked by very populist ideas of taxing CEO bonuses. So I think that there is still a very considerable unfinished business, and I'm fairly skeptical that this is going to be tackled in any way. Now, I will need 1 or 2 more minutes, perhaps. Many have said that there is an obvious shift of economic power to Asia. This is one graph to illustrate it, where you see that Asia, and in particular China, really stand out in terms of economic performance. Now, with this shift comes also a shift in economic clout and power.